Paragraph 2, put your finger where it says all across. Make sure your pen is in your hand and you're ready to annotate. I want you to earn that fire today. All across Dakota Territory and Nebraska that morning, thousands of children like Walter headed to school with quicker steps than usual. For weeks, they'd been trapped in their homes by dangerously cold weather. In some areas, the temperature had plunged to 40 below zero. It was cold enough to freeze a person's eyes shut and turn their fingers blue and their toes to ice. Schools all through the region had been closed. Parents kept their kids inside, huddled close to stoves. At least Walter's family lived in a proper house on Main Street. His dad, W.C., was a lawyer and a successful businessman. But most of the people living on this northern stretch of prairie were brand new settlers. They had come from Europe, mainly Sweden, Norway, and Germany. The majority were poor and struggling to survive in this punishing land. Without money to buy a house or building supplies, thousands lived in bleak sod houses, tiny dwellings built from bricks of hardened soil. Life in cramped soddy was never easy. Being trapped inside for weeks was torture. Now I notice that there's a picture, a photograph to support what the text is saying. I'm going to look at that photograph and read the caption underneath it. Captions always give me important information that help me figure out what I can learn from the picture. The caption of this photograph says, "The sod house, or soddy, was a type of home built in the 1800s. The prairie lacked standard building materials such as wood or stone. However, sod from thickly rooted prairie grass was abundant." Paragraph 4. What a relief it was to be back at school. It was still cold outside, only about 20 degrees, but after the weeks of frozen weather, that air felt almost spring-like. Many kids left home without their warm wool coats and sturdy boots. Walter wore just his trousers and woolen shirt. Girls wore their cotton dresses and leather shoes, their braids swinging merrily from their hatless heads. As children arrived at Walter's school, some stood outside on the steps. They admired the unusual color of the sky, golden with just a thin veil of clouds. "Like a fairy tale," one of them said. Now I see a heading. There's a new section, an Arctic blast. That's going to give me a hint about what this section is going to be about. But not everyone was smiling at the surprisingly warm weather and the glowing sky. Some people have learned the hard way that they should never trust the weather on America's northern prairie, especially in the winter. Wasn't there something spooky about the color of the sky? Wasn't it odd that the temperature had jumped more than 40 degrees overnight? A Dakota farmer named John Buckmiller thought so. He told his 12-year-old daughter, Josephine, that she'd be staying put that day. "There's something in the air," he said to her with a worried glance at the sky. There was indeed something in the air, and it was headed directly toward America's vast midsection. High up in the sky, 3 separate weather systems, masses of air of different temperatures, were about to crash together. The warm air that had delighted school children that morning would soon smash into a sheet of freezing Arctic air speeding down from Canada. Most dangerous of all was a low-pressure system, a spinning mess of unstable air churning. Next to churning, I see a little 2. That's a footnote. That's going to tell me what that word means if I look down at the end of the page. The bottom of the page tells me churning means rolling or spinning. The meeting of these 3 weather systems soon created a monstrous blizzard, a frozen white hurricane of terrifying violence. Paragraph 7. But Walter Allen and his classmates had no idea what was brewing above them as the endless prairie sky. Not even the experts knew what was coming. First, Lieutenant Thomas Woodruff, trained in the brand new science of weather forecasting, was working at his office in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was Woodruff's job to gather information about the weather, including the temperature and wind speeds in surrounding area. Using this information, Woodruff would try to predict what weather was heading down to the area around Groton. At 3 p.m. the day before, Woodruff had sent out his prediction for the following day. His forecast would be printed in small-town newspapers. For Minnesota and Dakota, slightly warmer, fair weather. Light to fresh, variable winds. Make sure your text is annotated and then flip immediately in your packet to questions 1 and 2.